Welcome to the Gamut of Performance Podcast, episode 19. On this episode of the podcast, I get to talk with Coach Tim Caron of Allegiant Gym. Coach Caron and I talk about his time at USC, his time at Army West Point, why Allegiant Gym is so special and how it got started, and then we dive into training philosophy, nutrition, and also what's going on in football strength and conditioning today. Coach Caron has a very unique perspective, so without further ado, here's Coach Tim Caron. Coach Caron, thank you so much for taking the time out to be on with us today. I'm really excited to talk to you. I hear so many good things about you from so many people. So for the listeners at home, will you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the profession?
So started as an undergrad at a school in Massachusetts called Westfield State College. And that transitioned to kind of at the end of my tenure there, wanting to go into exercise science. They call it movement science. So shifted gears, I finished my math degree and then completely started over again and went into movement science. So finished that program. At the end, they were kind of health and wellness focused, meaning that they're going to go cardiovascular fitness or I guess some sort of what's the term we're looking for? Looking at corporate wellness.
Okay.
And I wanted nothing to do with that, which I was fortunate enough to be able to coach in my high school. And so I was able to do that. And I really had an interest in strength conditioning. So just asked if I can do a strength conditioning program there. And I got it. And from there, the ball started rolling. I ended up getting another internship at a Velocity Sports Performance in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And then Harvard, then Georgia Tech. And then I actually ended up getting a graduate assistant at Springfield College. One of the cool things about Springfield College, and just plug them, is you get teams on your own, but then also too at the end of the semester or spring semester you get to do another internship. So the ability to go off and do another internship, I think, really helped me a ton in terms of I was able to intern at Ole Miss there in Osmus.
Okay.
Not because of Aaron specifically. Aaron was amazing in my life and he was really important, but I went into that final internship after having teams under my belt. So I was a full-time strength coach at Springfield College. You got 4 or 5 teams, and
oh wow,
you roll through, and then you go do another internship, and all of a sudden, you're a different coach.
Yeah.
So the internship prior to is a really valuable experience. I mean, interning for guys like Eric Ciano, interning for guys like Craig Fitzgerald. You just learn a ton, but you're not a finished product to the point you think you are.
Yeah.
And then you get teams like that you do at Springfield College where you're thrown in the mix, and I had football, lacrosse, basketball, track and field, and women's volleyball. And it's then you go to a place like Ole Miss where you're literally just assisting with football, and you're good. You're a really good coach at that point, a lot better than you were before.
Okay.
And at the end of that summer, I ended up getting a full-time job at Georgia Tech to work for Eric Ciano again. Okay. And did that for 3 years, and then the guy who interned at Ole Miss, Aaron Osmus, ended up getting the job at USC. And when he got that job, he asked me if I would like to come, and I did. So that went 4 years, and after that, we all got let go. Got the right place, wrong time, maybe, I don't know. Yeah. And then ended up getting the head job, so Army West Point. Okay. And transitioned to Army West Point, did that for 3 years. Ended up beating Navy at the end, which is really cool. And from that final point, I got a call from a couple former athletes, and they said, "Hey, we want to open up a gym." So I said, "Let's do it." And moved out to California, opened up a gym, doing that ever since. So almost the last 2 years.
Oh wow. Okay. No, that's a really cool journey. And will you just elaborate a little bit about your time at USC?
I mean,
some of the takeaways and some of the things you learned there.
It's a job. Yeah. It's a job. You can be fired. Something I tell coaches all the time, young coaches, is don't chase a logo. Yeah. Chase a really good work environment. Yeah. Aaron Osmus is an incredible friend and mentor to me, so that was the only reason why I went. I didn't give a shit if Aaron was at. Okay. If Aaron was at Idaho. Yeah. He was that valuable to me. Yeah. USC is good. I mean, there's nothing really obviously my partners are from USC, and there's a lot of other things I take from USC, but on the scale of jobs, it's the same thing probably anywhere. Okay. It's a nice logo. Yeah. That's about it. If you like LA and you like going out, it's probably good, but then you're probably in the wrong profession.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, will you elaborate a little bit on your time at Army West Point?
Yeah, one was my first head experience, so that was one that was like the goal, right? Sorry.
No.
First head experience, which was like the goal as we were driving through and trying to like progress up. That was the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Football only.
Okay.
Really another really good indicator of like it's a job. So working with Olympic staff, which we have two different ideologies and focuses, and I think from that perspective there was a lot to learn there. Kids are great. I think it's an obvious statement, but really good people. Coaches, football coaches are great. It's just learning to cohabitate with Olympic staff that doesn't have the same, I guess, ethos as you do. That would probably be the most important thing to work with there. I think there's a lot to be taken from knowing your plan and your mission and staying the course. I think it can get really convoluted when you have the pressure of a job under you. But if you really break down like a USC, Georgia Tech, or Army, if you don't win games, you're gone. So in any of those roles, you can look at it twofold. Like one, like I want to be an employee of USC, or I want to be an employee of Army West Point. Or you can look at another role of like I work for USC football and I work for Army West Point football. And I always took the latter because I didn't interview with an AD ever. I never sat down with an AD. I never sat down with any administration. I've always sat down with football coaches.
Okay.
So like right then and there, the line's been drawn in the sand. I'm a football strength coach.
Yeah.
And my job wasn't necessarily to be friends with people that we worked with outside of the football department.
Yeah.
And I had great relationships with the football staff and football athletic trainers and football equipment managers. Not necessarily the case of Olympic staff. And I'm not like a horrible person where like, but if I don't think you have a great work ethic, if I don't think that you have a really sound philosophy, or I don't think that you're working at your craft, I don't think that you're coaching hard, I probably distance myself from you.
Okay.
Which I think to be at Army in that like light is, I came there for a mission, like win football games and not get fired. And I didn't really care otherwise. Okay. Which I think is the same thing in this world. I'm working in private. Like there's tons of ideologies and like philosophies, and like a large part of them, they're not to the standards that we probably know as strength and conditioning coaches. One, we don't have the pressures of our jobs, but two, people make excuses because of the environment or the setting that we're in. I just think can happen in college strength and conditioning really, really easily. And if you can avoid that at any cost, you should. You should work towards it.
Yeah. No, I like that. Okay. So shifting gears a little bit and talking more about that private sector. So what makes Allegiant special compared to other private facilities?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think it should be special, but we base our training off of principles, and the further we go into this, the more I think that's important. I find that one, or why, is centered off the fact that people are more overweight, sicker, and not feeling good about themselves, or just flat out depressed than they've ever been in the history of our culture as Americans. And it's a $30 billion industry just towards fitness options alone.
Wow.
And not counting supplements, food and supplements. And when we look at the investment of money annually into quote unquote like health and like exercise, we still have an outcome of we're fat or depressed and we don't see any results. And where is that money going? And I think it's going into non-principle based training. I think it's going into things that are making the excuse like, oh, well, people are by nature not consistent, or they can go elsewhere. So, we just got to give them what they want. And not completely being impervious to the idea that we're an actual like commercial business and we need to sell our product, but having a standard and having principle-based training in this like world of random ad hoc, like completely like just flying off the cuff, like whiteboard coaching, like I have a hard time like in that world. And we're just going right towards the tip of the spear, and we're doing exactly what we would do with a college athlete.
Okay.
Scaling it a little bit more towards our members, where we've kind of, maybe changed up some things, not as heavily on Olympic lifts, not as heavy on the training days per week, or not as heavy as maybe the high nervous system intensive stuff that we could do with a college athlete. But for the big take home is like going back to progressive overload, going back to the SAID principle, going back to intensity and frequency and volume, going back to what's the appropriate dose to get someone stronger and fitter and help them towards a goal.
Yeah.
Just burying them for a day or doing something like that's always provocative or like always engaging or stimulating. Like we want to build up like qualities, strength, power, speed, work up in terms of body composition, work up in terms of hypertrophy. Like the goals might be different, but principles still apply.
Okay. Fair enough. Do you have different like key performance indicators that you track with like your athletic population and then your gen pop?
I mean, I would say more now I look more at relative strength.
Okay.
Before it was looking at speed and power. I still think relative strength is important in terms of an indicator for speed and power, but for us, it's not necessarily in the lens of how much I can move my body. It's more of a matter of what's my body composition indicating relative to the goal of moving more weight, right? So if like I'm lighter or I'm leaner, I'm going to be more efficient and I'll be able to do more pull-ups, and that's a great indicator for us. So in terms of testing, we look at really at relative strength, but more so like, is it getting us stronger and is it getting us better body comp?
Okay, fair enough. So what would you ever go back to college, do you think, or are you pretty set? You like private sector, and why, and what are those reasons?
I have no idea. I didn't say I would ever go private. I think it's more of a matter of, I don't think we pick our journey. I think our journey picks us. Okay. So work hard and you treat people right. And if an opportunity presents itself and it's better than your current one, you have a conversation and you have the outweighs the pluses and negatives, and you make a decision. Yeah, no, that's cool. I don't know. I don't miss practice. I don't miss meetings. Science meetings, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
Time wasted I've ever seen in my life, but now in hindsight.
No, there's a lot of that. So moving forward, right? So I talked to Sean Hayes. So he talked on this idea of, or this event, Muscle Camp, right? So will you touch a little bit on what it is and kind of what sparked it?
Yeah, there's a YouTube video of Tom Platz. And if you don't know who Tom Platz is, you should absolutely Google him. Monster. And there's actually a video of him squatting like 500, like 24 times.
Unreal.
Absolutely ridiculous. But unique training methods, to say the least. But he put on a camp called Muscle Camp, where people literally just watched him lift in his style of training, which really the name completely got ripped off from. But in terms of like the concept of like Muscle Camp, when we looked at what people are doing, I think there is a very like systemic problem. People have really no direction or really no like application of hard training. Like they just don't, they think they are, but they're really not. Most of us don't, even myself, like I probably could go harder, but having that experience where we can look at and say, all right, this is going to be probably one of the most intense weeks you go through. And you can go back to super training, or even go into Bumpa and look at these super compensation cycles. Where it's purposely trying to overreach in a very short period of time to get gross adaptations down the road and making up for lost time, right? So we have this like concept where we're looking at people don't train really hard, and we have another concept where we look at, from a physiology, like if we can somehow overreach for a period of time and accommodate them with the right nutrition, right recovery modalities between massage or ART and then IV therapy, like who knows, like, well, maybe this can kind of thrust somebody into a whole nother like stratosphere. And the other aspect is we did 2-a-day training in the Army and got pretty good at it. And we did it because we always felt like, and it wasn't like we had like this chip on our shoulder. We felt like we were like walk-on syndrome. We thought it was the ideal way to get more results in a shorter period of time, and loading up nervous system intensive stuff in the morning, and then following up with more muscular system or cardiovascular system stuff in the afternoon, you can really, really like get a lot out of a given day. And then following up with maybe potentially a high-low or vertical integration, looking at like, hey, I want to maximize a day's like quality or muscle group or actually just nervous system, and then followed up with another day of different area or just a straight up drop in intensity. Like you can get incredible high amount of volume and high intensity volumes in a very short period of time. And that was like the premise. And set up to the first one, Sean and several other people came out. And the good thing is they were all really, really good lifters. So that helps in terms of that process of like, hey, this is an intense session.
Yeah.
Like, we want you to go all out and give everything you got. When Sean hears that, it's like it clicks and he goes at it, and then he goes out of there like, all right, we got to come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
We got you. Like, we'll make it through. And building that kind of that mentality of training hard and doing it and like pushing through to the bitter end. Like that's what we're trying to get.
No, that's awesome. Okay. And you talked a little bit about the IV treatment, right? But so I'm assuming there's probably some type of supplementation that you use along with like a muscle camp. So let's talk supplements. Like, what are the best bang for your buck supplements that you would recommend, or that you yourself take?
You get what you pay for. So cheap supplements get no results. You gotta pay. I just don't go to Costco. Don't go to Vitamin Shop or anything else like that. Like, maybe there's stuff, but like, or if you're on Amazon, like this most expensive stuff where you're kind of scrolling through, like, I don't want to get that. Like, that's probably where you should stay. And there's a reason for that. Like, one, like, I'm not a huge advocate of NSF. I don't think it's like all that important in my world. I mean, it's mostly just to kind of like, I mean, it's kind of like greasing palms. Like, you can say, hey, we're NSF certified, but basically you're just paying for it.
Yeah.
I think from looking at the ingredient list and saying, all right, like, what's the desired effect? What is a therapeutic dose? How do we accomplish the task of improving whatever quality we're trying to do? So, not to specifically say creatine, but creatine, bang for your buck, like that value you get and the return on that investment you get, I don't think there's a better one. If you look at, like, if I could pay $15 for 100 servings for a really high grade creatine, and like, that's an absolute thing. And from the perspective of creatine and what you're getting out of it, not only are you getting like the better ATP, PCR channels kind of dialed in, you know, you're looking at adenosine receptors, you're looking at people who are sleep debt, you're looking at people who have a problem with mitochondrial function and ATP. Creatine helps in all those areas. So if you have an athlete that has some sort of sleep deprivation, if you have an athlete that's doing anaerobic alactic activity, and you're not supplementing creatine, like, you're not really looking at the hard facts. And then in terms of like any potential like downsides, unless you have excessively high blood levels of creatine and you have something going on with excessive protein turnover, you should absolutely be doing supplementing creatine, like no doubt, like absolutely. Multis, again, you get what you pay for. Most multis have such a high PSI. Like, so if you look at Central and Costco, like, what they're gonna try to do is make that pound per square inch so dense that the bottle doesn't break down, or the pills in the bottle don't break down, so you don't return it. You'll never digest it. Not to mention, they fortify it with folic acid usually, which folic acid is not absorbable by the gut. It has to be in the form of folate. In fact, if you take folic acid on top of the fortified foods that we're getting for folic acid, you're going to block the absorption of folate, which is going to put you further in the folate, like the folic acid, like debt as you go through it. Not to mention all B vitamins in some level, like B12 should be chelated. And then the other one is all the minerals being chelated. Like, is the zinc chelated? Is the magnesium chelated? And then looking at the balance between the fat soluble vitamins, A, D, E, K. Like, if it's such a gross disproportion or some doesn't have any, like, you're probably going to have a hard time absorbing it. So having that like train of thought of looking at your multi and going, okay, is there a rationale here, or am I just popping whatever multi? And just, I have no allegiance to any multi or anything like that, but looking at something like a liquid form of multivitamin is is not a good approach either.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, we work in athletic environments. Like, easier your athlete to get a pump and they get some of that.
Yeah.
The molecular weight of minerals and vitamins are different.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm looking in a liquid soluble form, like, and if I have a different weight of a mineral, which is, I mean, let's just say it's a metal,
mm-hmm.
starts dropping, as opposed to a water soluble vitamin, which has a very light molecular density or small molecular density, it's going to start rising.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pumping, and
yeah.
it's pulling from the bottom up.
Mm.
Giving your kids maybe an excessive levels of minerals. I doubt it has a ton in it.
Yeah.
I'm sure it doesn't have enough, but either way, it goes back to the point you're just kind of wasting your time and wasting your money.
Yeah.
But you're giving a healthy dose of non-chelated minerals right off the bat,
mm-hmm.
and then at the end, it's just very crappy, like probably like completely broken down water-soluble vitamins.
Yeah.
I mean, vitamin C is such a sensitive molecule. Like, I mean, you can't. You probably can really like disrupt that really quickly if it's like shaking around a lot and all these other things. It's better in certain forms. So again, like going back to it's what you pay for, but we have a bunch that we can utilize if it's a whole nother like topic matter, and we spent a whole long time like going through it. But in terms of what you should be giving athletes routinely, like multis, magnesium from chelated, like honestly, you can't give enough. Like give like whatever you think is enough, give more. The only thing will happen will be essentially potentially loosen stools, but it's such an overly utilized mineral. On top of it, like everyone's deficient, and on top of it, it's a massive electrolyte. So we're looking at like alkalinity and acidic balance in that local muscular area. Like magnesium's critical there. B vitamins, again, like methylcobalaminate and folate, like just getting good B complex. Big companies know the difference, and they'll do it that way. You just burn through so many B vitamins. If you really want to dive into it, I mean, just look at your Krebs cycle and look at the metabolites off that Krebs cycle. They're essentially all B vitamins. So, like, if you want great mitochondrial function, if you want great liver function, if you want great cognitive function, B vitamins in plentiful amounts. And then kind of depending on like situational stuff, but I mean creatine and beta alanine and a good grass-fed whey protein is really good. If you have some sort of whey allergy, then you should probably be doing either branched chain amino acids or some sort of plant-based protein like pea isolate or rice hemp kind of blend. And then, I mean, really honestly, like we think most people have some sort of glucose or insulin dysregulation. We promote a lot of UCAN. I think UCAN's a really great product, and I think with the world we're living in terms of insulin dysregulation and cortisol dysregulation, we really want to manage insulin as much as we can. So none of those are cheap if you get them right. So bang for your buck isn't really the best way to go about it. But you'll get great results in the money you spend.
Yeah. What was that last one you said? Was it UCAN?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's UCAN. It's not a waxy maize. It's a modified cornstarch where they boil it, bake it to a specific like density. So when it goes through your digestive tract, the osmolarity in your gut just fuses, and it doesn't impact insulin, but it can replenish glycogen stores and maintain blood glucose levels at a level like a high glycemic carb, but without impacting insulin. So you're not going to get a blood sugar drop, as well as you're not going to affect that insulin cycle, so you're not going to have insulin resistance down the road. You're probably not going to have leptin resistance. You're probably going to have a lot better regulation of your glucose. And for athletic populations, it was really intended for this not type 1 diabetic, but a rare disease that you can't even utilize insulin nor create it. So these kids are going to ketoacidosis and dying quickly. They gave them cornstarch all the time, and they somehow kept them alive. Where they're able to stabilize for longer. So for the athletic population, you're looking at like, okay, can I get the benefits of a high glycemic carb and get the insulin bump without managing or manipulating insulin? I get a lot faster glycogen replenishment. I get a lot more stable blood glucose. Focus higher, recovery's faster, and it's a really, really kind of from the perspective of looking at the world we live in. Like you're looking at a game scenario, like whatever teams you guys are working with, giving them like pre-game high glycemic like chews and gels and stuff like that, like you just start in this blood sugar roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
And you get to halftime, it's rushing back in some of this high glycemic carbs. They're like, oh man, I feel tired. Just smack about Powerade.
Yeah.
You know, this super like spike of high glycemic carbs.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna get very, very like big drops in overall like just performance and focus. Mm-hmm. But then on the other end, you're gonna see kids coming out of your program complete insulin dysregulation, mm-hmm. right? Like there are people who are lean that have such insulin dysregulation, they're pre-diabetic, if not full blown.
Wow.
And it's scary. Like that's nuts. You know, like specifically like your weight gain kids and all these other guys that you got to work with, like they got to recover, and you got to push them hard, and you got to give them great recovery. But everyone's go-to tool is like just high glycemic carbs, and there is a time and place. If I got a kid who's really lean and I know he's insulin sensitive, and if we can get his blood work, and we can look at H1AC, we can look at fasting blood glucose, and he can handle high insulin, there's nothing more anabolic.
Yeah,
those kids are so rare. Like they're not around too often, and it has to be like in a circumstance like a coach comes up to you, he's like, I want you to get 40 pounds on this kid in the next 3 months. Like insulin's your best tool.
Yeah,
you better be using high glycemic carbs, and like more monosaccharide the better. The more straight glucose the better. Like load up. But if you have a kid that needs to gain weight and you can slow play it, and he already has altered body composition and maybe altered just insulin regulation, like use something like a UCAN that can help in terms of recovery from these workouts and maintaining energy, but over time won't cause all this like metabolic breakdown.
Okay. No, that's super interesting. I didn't know any of that, so that's really helpful. I appreciate you sharing that. And shifting gears a little bit more, right? So let's just talk a little bit about what's going on in football strength and conditioning. So we got the Maryland incident. We got a bunch of cases of rhabdo. What's going on in Ohio State, even though that's not directly with strength and conditioning, you know, I think it kind of sheds a light on that. And so just what's your take on the whole situation?
It's disappointing. It's sad. These are, you know, children that like, you know, someone like said, hey, you're responsible for. I think there's that line of pushing people and just being abusive, and obviously in a lot of respects we've crossed it. Honestly, like from the perspective of looking at the hiring practice, like I said, I've never interviewed with an AD, I've never interviewed with an athletic trainer. I've only interviewed with the coach, and the qualities that he's looking for. If I want that head job, I better need to exemplify. But he doesn't know a damn thing about physiology and biomechanics, and even sports psychology in a strength and conditioning setting. What he's looking at is, can this guy be the hammer? And in all fairness to him, that football coach is looking to make a hire. He's judging enough criteria and subjective that are subjective, and criteria that's going to be more based off of loyalty. And you know, it's either a ship moving forward and you're all hands on deck, or it's a sinking ship and you're not jumping. You know, and that's what they're looking at, which makes people, and I think, make not the most informed decisions when working with student athletes. Also, too, like the trajectory of looking at like these premier programs and these premier coaches that are like really good. And I think if you ever watch like Tommy Moffitt, if you ever watch Chris Doyle, if you ever watch like Mickey Marotti, which I've never seen up close personally, they have their like philosophy and they have their system. What makes that system and philosophy work is them. And their contingencies they have to do where like, oh man, we're running, you know, let's say, you know, LSU's running their 110s, and Tommy probably has a really great perspective to look at and say, all right, this is working right now, or I need to adjust. That's where you're getting with Tommy Moffitt, is a guy with a ton of experience running his program. And then you look at a copy of that program, like, I want a Tommy Moffitt guy. And all they know is basically like what is on a sheet of paper what Tommy did, but they don't know Tommy's influence. They don't know Tommy's charisma. They don't know Tommy's like personal touch. They don't know Tommy's like adjustments he's making constantly in revisions just from intuitively seeing this stuff. So you want a copy of that, and you want like the mannerisms, and you want the program, with rightly so. I mean, he's incredibly successful, and Tommy's an amazing coach, and Mickey Murati's an amazing coach, and so is Chris Doyle. Like all these guys, but you get a copy of that. You need to get a person who could be able to break off when needed, right? Like if you're running the 110s and you see a kid really struggling, is all you know, like I got to finish this because this is what Coach Moffitt would do or Coach Marati would do, and you wouldn't look at it from the perspective of if they're in that circumstance, they have that like that built-in structure of going, all right, I know I need to stop, or I need to give a little longer rest period, or whatever it is. And I think that's part of the problem as well. We're looking at coaches who have now like familiarity with like styles, like there's been like camps created, and it's always been there, but like they're bringing in coaches of like, hey, just do what this guy did. And I don't know what you're gonna do if something doesn't work, but you'll figure it out. You're a professional. And a lot of these guys are probably really good coaches. It's just they're forced to be able to make make a decision based off of criteria in which they got the job. Like I want you to do exactly what that guy did, and when things go awry or things aren't going according to plan, and they have no mechanism to shift because they're felt so much pressure to stay towards that plan. There's a really good line in I think it's very analogous, but like if you ever read anything by Malcolm Gladwell, he has Blink, and he talks about like decision making and like that kind of concept of looking at if and like your Asian Airlines, like the hierarchical structure of like never breaking command so much so that they would let a plane crash based off of not telling the lead pilot that, hey, this isn't working, we're going to crash, like is so strong. There's that like level to that in this, right? Where like, hey, this is exactly what this coach did. This is what my boss did. I have to stay the course, and you get tunnel vision, right? You don't want to break hierarchy because if I do, he's going to fire me and I can't feed my family or pay my mortgage. Or if I do, he's going to say, hey, why did you stick to the plan? You know, like I didn't hire you to run your program. I want you to run this program. Which comes back to the original system. The problem is football coaches aren't making these decisions based off of the highest caliber person or coach. They're making decisions based off of their preferences and subjective criteria, which I think really needs to be evaluated. But with that also being said, I know that will severely impact salaries. You know, and I don't think there's many strength and conditioning coaches who are saying I have aspirations of being the equivalent of what the head athletic trainer is making. You know, like I'm going to be great, like making $85,000 a year. Like we're looking at USA Today and we're saying, damn, $650 right now. Like, that's what I want. That's what like the goal is now. And you know that makes it even more, right? Like that makes it more intensified. And like you get a guy who's going to even more like comply to that because it's just more money. Football coaches do the same damn thing, right? Like they either are a really good coordinator or they know how to recruit, and they put all their chips in that basket, right? They just do it like hard. And like you see like coaches who fast track up, like some recruiters are incredible in terms of like their side of the ball, and they're funneling in on that and they're zeroing in on that, and when they get to a head coaching role, you know, they're going to copy whoever that head coach they worked for based off of like they only had a specific skill. And that makes it even more compounded. So the whole big issue really is like it's really complicated, but I think it really stems from hiring practices. I think it really stems from the length of time. I mean, I was a head strength coach at 32, and in hindsight, like I don't know if that was a long enough time in learning what we're actually doing. And I had a pretty intense like trajectory up there. I mean, I was working a lot, and I had a lot of experience going into it. You know, I see now younger coaches with not as much experience getting some of these jobs. You know, you're kind of running the gambit there. You know, like, and I was fortunate enough to have like really good mentors, which I think kind of fast tracked me. I was fortunate enough to have like my own, I guess, independent like thought on things, which in line of like I'm gonna plug from guys like Fitzgerald and Ciano and Osmus, and I'm gonna know how am I gonna break away in case this isn't going according to plan. But there's a lot to think about. There's a lot that's wrong right now. I don't know where it's gonna fix. I don't know if I would be fixed personally.
No, definitely. That's a good perspective. So the NSCA, like in that same vein, right? The NSCA is making some changes to their certification in 2031. So CSCS candidates, they have to hold a bachelor's in S&C related field, right? So how do you think that's going to affect the trajectory of college strength and conditioning?
I think they absolutely should. I honestly, like, I'm an advocate for NSCA. I just always have been. I don't get what the knock on it is. I think if anything, like you look at NATA, what they did was bring it all together and have one unified front, where anyone that has to be an athletic trainer in college or pro has to be NATA certified. It's like simple. It's like that. Oh no, NATA. Sorry, come back to me when you get it.
Yeah.
We don't have in college strength conditioning, not even close. So, and it's like this like internal battle between CSCCA and CSCS, and I think the problem with CSCCA is like, well, anybody can sit for an NSCA CSCS exam, but if anything, that does is like we're not looking at it from a bigger enough picture. It's not bringing like CSCCA is a very secular, small, closed-minded group right now. That those are the guys who are causing the problems. Like really, honestly, like if you break it down, those are all CSCCA coaches, which is their learning structure. It's their testing structure. It's their criteria of developing coaches. Like you have to go to their conference every year, which you have to listen to who they want you to listen to, and that's all you need to do in terms of maintaining your accreditation. As opposed to NSCA, like I think I've always loved about NSCA is I can go out and get Poliquin certification. I can go out and get precision nutrition. I can go out and do USAW. I can go out and do anything I want. I can go to FRC next week, and that will be NSCA, and I can put that towards my continuing education units. You can't do that with CSCCA, or at least that I know of at this point. I haven't really looked at that in depth in a while, but I think that makes like very, very like closed-minded, and I think this makes very open-minded. And I'm exposed to athlete trainers, personal trainers, sometimes just people who want to see if they can pass the CSCS. And if you're smart enough to walk in an NSCA CSCS exam and pass it without any background in kinesiology, physiology, you got my respect. That's not an easy test.
Yeah, no, I agree.
A lot of people fail that thing who are exercise science majors, and the knock on it that all these people there, and then looking at it big picture wise, like for us to make like changes that we're talking about with athletic departments, you need deep pockets. Yeah. And NCAA's just got a bigger enterprise. And I'm not trying to jump on that bandwagon because like all the other people are doing it, but I look at their learning structure and how I can grow within that versus CSCCA, and I'm only going to be that. And I know a lot of people I know are CSCCA, and I know a lot of people are adamant on you got to become CSCCA because we got to protect our college strength conditioning thing. But you're just forcing it into a further like good old boy network or just a further like singular-minded like focused people. I'm good with that. I mean, again, I'm the guy who went off and went private. I left a full-time head job. Like I left it. Like I walked away. So I'm not like cut from the same cloth with everybody. And I'm not like, I don't want to say I'm antagonistic by nature, but there's a reason why I went CSCS because of those entities. And like, I don't think people are doing that much investigation as to why. They're just going, oh, my boss told me I got to get CSCCA. Really? Okay, that's a pretty silly thing to do. Like, how about you do some research? You're a young coach. Like, you're going to have your next, 30 years dictated by a coach's opinion on a certification. And you got to go intern with a master's level strength coach. And the definition of a master's level strength coach is opinion based off the people that have been doing it. Yeah. Like it's further perpetuating like the cycle. Yeah. Like no, I'm good. I'm good with CSCCA, and I think CSCS should be the singular one. I think CSCS should buy CSCCA and have a college setting, which it tried. That's not going to happen for a long time, if ever.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And you talking about continuing education, right? So what are some resources that have had a big impact on you in terms of continuing education?
Well, I grew up in New England, so I guess my first big exposure was Mike Boyle. Still to this day, like I'm just blown away by one, like his drive to learn, his perspective, the simplicity of it all. Like, it's just amazing. I mean, there's very little you could say how he ran and how he did, like that I would disagree with or I think is wrong. Like, it's just amazing. Like, I'm just more and more impressed by him every day. So I'm still on strengthcoach.com, like get it on the forums, and I think that's a great resource. Then Poliquin, who, I just absorb as much as you possibly can, and move on. There's a lot to take from. One thing I think is actually, like, as I'm getting older, I think I put more value on, like, a guy like Mike Boyle is such a great person. Like, family, like, the way he treats people, his perspective on things, like, that's so valuable. Variety, obviously, with precision nutrition, moving, there's so much stuff in the pipeline. Like, honestly, like, if you're bored doing this, or you say, like, I learned it all, like, you ain't looking, you ain't trying, or you should move on. You should do something else. Like, I can't imagine people that don't, like, seek out really high quality, like, continuing education. And, like, you can go in rabbit holes for a long time. Like, you can go into nutrition rabbit hole, you can go into the performance rabbit hole, you can go into the movement rabbit hole, and, like, it's never ending. And, there's times I feel frustrated, like, I'm not doing enough, and I love that feeling, and I've been doing this for a while now, and I think I'm pretty progressive and trying to learn as much as I possibly can, and I've been sunk in a lot of my personal resources, and I hate when young coaches tell me they can't afford it. Like, get a loan, do it. Like, this is your craft. Like, I don't care. Like, then you're just always going to be behind guys like me who are willing to pay for it. Like, go out there and pay for it. If you think you can learn something from it, and you think you can gain some knowledge, and it costs whatever amount, pay it. Because that's yours now, and this is your trade. And if you can access those skills or have a greater depth of knowledge of something, I've probably paid Paul Quinn $15,000 out of pocket. Like, I've never gotten continuing education supplied for it at work or anywhere I worked. Like, my degrees, like, any Boyle thing I paid for, like, all the books, like, get an Amazon card, get some points, and buy books off of that. Whatever you got to do. But like, if you're a young coach and you're not investing a good, healthy amount of your personal money into this, I'm probably not going to really connect with you. Like, you don't really want it.
No, I mean, I think that kind of goes back to the you get what you pay for kind of thing that you said earlier, right? Same thing in education. So, no, that's a really good point. And then moving into this last kind of section, right, it's just kind of some rapid fire questions. Just tell me kind of the first thing that you're thinking of, right? So the first one, so if you have any, what are some quotes that you kind of live by?
Nothing really.
Okay.
I live by actions,
Okay.
I like quotes, but I don't like live by them. Work hard.
Okay.
Do right.
Yeah.
Show people who care.
Simple.
Coach Monken one, I guess.
Yeah. No, I like it. Okay. Next one. What's the best advice you've ever been given?
Again, I don't know. I was looking through this. I was like, I don't know if anything like distinguishes it. I just live by the reflection you want to show the world, I guess. Like, if you really want something and you want people to respect you, you got to go out there and reflect that to the world. I don't know if that's advice, but like, just like Craig Fitzgerald told me about, like, hey, whatever responsibility I had to do, like, like, you got to go out there because that's your resume right there. And same thing with Ciano, and same thing with AA, and those guys always, like, put yourself out there to the world, which you want them to see. And I've always really thought that was like a poignant thing to do, and I think it makes you more authentic. I think if you can be authentic in any kind of circumstance, you'll last longer, because anything you're trying to be something you're not, like, that will come out quick. So just be authentic, be you, and if you work really hard on your first day of your internship, you better work really hard on your last day of your internship, because I think you're just full of shit, and you're not really being forthcoming.
No, I like that. Okay. What's the worst advice you've ever been given?
It's all about dollar signs and handshakes. I hate that one.
Okay.
Like to think that, like, this is like a business. Like, screw that. It's not. It's not a business. Like, and if you look at the distribution of wealth or finances in our industry, it's so top heavy. So the 99% of our field is making sub six figures. So you're doing this for the love of it. You're doing this for the connectedness to people. You're doing this for your personal passion. Like, I tell our interns every year, like, you have turned a hobby into a profession. Don't lose sight of that. Like, you love doing this on your own. You love doing this with or without being compensated for it. You love doing it with or without athletes. Like, you should love to lift. You should love to read about lifting. You should love to like eat correctly or fight to eat correctly or define what's eating correctly. You should love taking supplements. You should love like everything that's strength and conditioning. And, from the perspective of like, it's all about that next job. It's all about making more money. Like, no, it's not. Like, it's not even close. Like, you walk around athletic departments, you know where you stand. Like, it's pretty obvious. In our fitness world, like, I'm fortunate where I have really good partners and I have a really good financial structure, but again, like I made like under 15 grand last year. I pretty much lived out of pocket, and whenever I ask like, oh man, like it must be great running your own business. Like, no, it sucks. You make no money. Like you're basically living off of what you made in college. Like, but again, like I'm in my mind, I'm like, wow, this is like still the right path. Like I'm not breaking from that. I went from making, honestly, 125 with a house to 15. But I mean, I have no regrets about that whatsoever. And I'm thinking like from the perspective of like now, I got a platform where I got 8 groups coming in a day. I got 150. Hopefully, in the next year, it's going to be 300 people like training in our system that I get to go through this process of training people correctly, giving them nutritional advice correctly, giving them all these things like that they're not getting elsewhere. Like I'm in the right world. Like I just feel it. And the same thing I felt in college. Like I wasn't doing it for the money. Like I mean, majority of my time wasn't making 6 figures as a college strength conditioning coach. So if it's about dollar signs and handshakes, go to Wall Street. Go to sales. Go real estate sales. Like trust me, that's where you probably should be.
No, that's good advice. Okay. So this last question, right? So what projects are you currently working on, and how can people kind of reach out to you and follow your journey?
I kind of defer to my partner. He's our marketing and advertising guy. I just honestly is trying to get as much quality information out there. And I'm not the greatest writer in the world, and I'll admittedly say that. Pretty to the point, kind of write bullet point style. But from the other perspective is like there is a need to get like information, but the hard part is like not doing like shock jockey or provocative stuff. Like I mean, again, like I spend the majority of my time like talking with people about progressive overload or like our SED principle and like frequency and intensity and the super compensation cycles or like things like that. And it's like, and they're pretty like vanilla, but like finding like just hammering the basics. And I don't know if there's like a super like attractive like project, so to speak. It's just the daily adherence to these like things that we know to be true, and finding ways to make whatever we're doing compelling and interesting. That's it's always good. Like, and I think the nutritional factors are always really important. We're just working through that, man. Like in terms of like outreach, I get like there's people with like 1 million like followers or connectedness to other people, and then there's people who are working with like 150 people who are fighting like hell to make a daily impact on those people. I've always been the 150 people, and I think from the outreach perspective of like people who are really good at leveraging themselves to the masses versus people who are really good at leveraging themselves to individuals and small secular groups, like you just got to find your style. Definitely more of a intimate like connectedness to people kind of guy. But I think that's where you make the change. I think you got to be boots on the ground. You got to interact with people, and you got to connect with people, and you got to talk to them, and you got to ask them, hey, how you doing? And they come up like, that's so good. Like, all right, that's a conversation we're gonna have to have. Like, what's going on? Like, oh, I didn't sleep last night. Oh, what's going on there? And backtrack. And then at the end, like, you can make some changes. But I can write an article about sleep, or I can write a book about sleep. But it probably won't make as much of an impact as just talking to someone. It's like this kind of like hard transition.
No, I get that. Awesome. Well, Coach, thank you for your time. So if somebody wanted to contact you, what is the best way to do that?
My Instagram, Tim Caron, too. You can go to allegiantgym.com. My email's on there. Go to our Allegiant Instagram. And just if anything Allegiant, you'll find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was really cool. It's awesome to hear your different perspective, because I feel like you said, you're kind of cut from a different cloth. So your perspective is different from a lot of people that I've talked to. So thank you so much for your time. This was immensely valuable, and I look forward to talking to you again soon, hopefully. Thanks again for joining me. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please like, comment, share, and go ahead and give me a review on iTunes so you can let me know what I'm doing well and what I could do better. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to this. Next week I'll have another exciting guest, but until then, this is the Gamut of Performance podcast.